Why are billions of American tax dollars flowing to war zones overseas, while our own communities crumble under the weight of poverty, homelessness, and inflation? In just the past few years, the U.S. has sent staggering sums to foreign nations, $314 billion to Ukraine since 2022, and this year alone, nearly $47 billion in military aid to Israel. These are mind-boggling figures, especially when you consider what's happening at home. Across the country, cities are facing a worsening homelessness crisis. Families are being priced out of housing. Wages can't keep up with the rising cost of living. Food insecurity is growing. And yet, our leaders keep signing off on massive foreign aid packages, citing national security and global stability. But what about stability for the single mother working 2 jobs and still can't afford rent? What about security for the veteran sleeping in his car? Supporting allies abroad may have its place, but it's time we ask ourselves, who's standing up for Americans struggling right here, right now? When our tax dollars are being spent, the first priority should be the people who earn them. The question isn't whether to help others. It's whether we can afford to ignore our own. A nation in crisis. America's growing homelessness crisis. Homelessness in the United States has reached a tipping point. On a single night in 2023, approximately 2 million people were homeless, a staggering 15% increase from the previous year. This sharp rise underscores a deepening crisis, one that reflects not only economic hardship, but also systemic neglect. From skyrocketing housing costs to inadequate mental health services, the challenges are layered and complex. Yet, perhaps the most troubling aspect is a growing disconnect between federal spending priorities and the urgent needs of everyday Americans. The 2023 Annual Homeless Assessment Report, AHR, paints a dire picture. Nearly 60% of homeless individuals are unsheltered, living in cars, tents, or on the streets. These individuals face brutal weather, heightened health risks, and constant vulnerability. Even more alarming, over 440,000 people are chronically homeless, meaning they've been without stable housing for extended periods. These are not people in need of a one-night shelter. They require sustained support, affordable housing options, mental health services, and job training to break free from the cycle of homelessness. Families with children are also suffering. In January 2023, an estimated 186,100 children experienced homelessness, up 16% from 2022, and an astounding 77% increase since 2006. These kids face disrupted schooling, emotional trauma, and limited access to health care. The long-term impact on their development and future prospects is devastating. What's worse is that communities of color are disproportionately affected, reflecting broader systemic inequalities in the U.S. Foreign spending versus domestic neglect. While homelessness surges, the U.S. government continues to allocate billions of dollars to foreign conflicts and overseas aid. In 2024, the national debt has soared past $35 trillion, straining the federal budget. With inflation eating away at household savings and millions of Americans unable to afford rent, a growing number of citizens are questioning the wisdom of funneling taxpayer dollars abroad while domestic needs go unmet. This is not an argument against international cooperation or humanitarian aid. Global crises matter, and the U.S. has long played a critical role in addressing them. However, the imbalance is glaring. How can we champion stability abroad when our own people lack shelter, food, and health care? Are our tax dollars working for us? For many Americans, the question of where taxpayer money goes is no longer just a matter of politics. It's a matter of survival. As families struggle with stagnant wages, rising rents, and skyrocketing costs of essentials like groceries and health care, frustration grows over how the federal government prioritizes its spending. A common concern, while the U.S. invests billions in military efforts overseas, urgent needs at home go unmet. From deteriorating public infrastructure to a growing homelessness crisis, Americans are seeing the results of decades of underinvestment in domestic well-being. Rent prices have soared in nearly every major city, and with wages lagging far behind inflation, more people than ever live one paycheck away from losing their homes. Health care has become increasingly unaffordable, and even basic necessities are harder to come by. The pressure is building, and not just financially. There's a growing sense that the disconnect between government action and the day-to-day struggles of citizens is widening. People are asking, why are we funding wars abroad when our own people are slipping through the cracks? This frustration isn't limited to one political group. Across party lines, there's a sense that government leaders, Republican and Democrat alike, have been too focused on global affairs while failing to address the needs of their constituents. The cry for accountability and transparency is getting louder, especially as Americans feel left behind in their own country. Billions abroad, crisis at home. America has a long history of getting involved in costly foreign conflicts. Under President George W. Bush, the U.S. launched a war in Afghanistan, one of the most expensive and prolonged wars in American history, costing taxpayers an estimated $3 trillion. That investment spanned 2 decades, countless lives lost, and ended in a chaotic withdrawal with the Taliban quickly regaining control. Many Americans look at the outcome and wonder, was it worth the cost? Fast forward to present, and the Biden administration is funneling billions into the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. While there are strategic and humanitarian reasons behind the support, including defending democracy and pushing back against authoritarianism, critics point out that the U.S. is again spending heavily abroad while struggling to address basic needs at home. Crumbling infrastructure, underfunded schools, inadequate health care, and a deepening housing crisis. And it's not stopping there. As tensions rise in the Middle East, particularly surrounding U.S. ally Israel, there are growing concerns that America may soon commit even more resources to foreign conflict. While these global alliances may serve diplomatic or military interests, they often come at a cost that directly impacts American citizens. At what point do we say enough? What if the greatest threat to our nation isn't across the ocean, but right here at home, in the form of economic instability, inequality, and government inaction? It's time for Americans to demand that their tax dollars go toward rebuilding their communities, not just maintaining influence abroad. Prioritizing domestic needs doesn't mean abandoning global responsibilities. It means finally striking a balance that puts Americans first. The inflationary toll of foreign wars. Foreign wars, often framed as necessary measures for national security or humanitarian support, carry significant costs that extend beyond battlefields and international borders. One of the most overlooked consequences is the domestic inflation that arises from such conflicts. As the United States pours billions of dollars into military operations and foreign aid, the ripple effect is felt at home, most notably in the rising cost of living for everyday Americans. Take the Afghanistan War as a clear example. Spanning 20 years and costing the U.S. an estimated $3 trillion, it illustrates how sustained military action can create inflationary pressure. Massive wartime expenditures often lead to increased government borrowing and an expanded money supply, both of which contribute to inflation. Printing more money to finance war efforts weakens the dollar's value, while rising national debt pressures the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, compounding inflationary stress. American households end up paying the price, not only through taxes, but also via inflated costs for housing, food, and fuel. The current Russia-Ukraine conflict further demonstrates this economic chain reaction. The U.S. has committed billions in aid and military support to Ukraine, which adds to federal spending and puts strain on the budget. Meanwhile, sanctions on Russian oil have choked one of the world's largest energy supplies, driving up global oil prices. This spike directly hits American consumers at the gas pump, but the impact doesn't stop there. Higher fuel prices lead to increased costs for transporting goods, which in turn raises prices on everything from groceries to construction materials. Inflation, once a slow-moving tide, becomes a fast-rising flood driven by war-related disruptions in global supply chains. Future risks. In addition to direct inflationary pressures, foreign wars also shift vital resources away from the domestic economy. Every dollar spent abroad is a dollar not invested in infrastructure, supply chain improvements, or public services. While funding foreign allies and military campaigns, the U.S. often underinvests in sectors that could ease domestic inflation, such as renewable energy, housing development, and transportation modernization. This diversion creates a dangerous feedback loop. Inflation rises, Yet the government lacks the fiscal flexibility to address it effectively. As domestic production struggles to keep up with demand and key industries face persistent bottlenecks, prices continue to surge. The choice to invest abroad rather than stabilize at home exacerbates economic vulnerability. Looking ahead, growing tensions in the Middle East, particularly in Israel, raise additional alarms. The region's importance to global oil production means that any escalation could again drive up energy prices. If the U.S. becomes further involved, either through military presence or allied support, Americans could see another wave of inflation rooted in foreign conflict. As history shows, wars in the Middle East have repeatedly led to oil shocks and subsequent spikes in transportation and utility costs. In conclusion, while foreign wars may be fought abroad, their consequences are deeply felt at home. Inflation, fueled by military spending, disrupted supply chains, and diverted resources, becomes a hidden yet powerful cost of international conflict. To safeguard the economic well-being of American families, a reassessment of foreign priorities may be necessary, one that places greater emphasis on strengthening the domestic economy over extending influence overseas.